Hey guys, doing a video here focused on hammer coral. I'm going to talk through growth, dosing, feeding, flow, placement, which really kind of determines the light intensity they get, and how all of that affects good health as well as maximizes growth within the coral. I'm going to have a few examples here of growth to share with you guys just so you can see the different amounts that they get. I would say on average a lot of this coral receives anywhere from a head split every 2 months to every 3 months, some a little faster, some a little slower. Really depends on a lot of different factors, and we're going to cover a lot of those factors here in this video. Also for this video, I'm going to assume that water quality is good. If you don't have good water quality or good quality light, that will affect your corals, that will create issues that are detrimental, of course, to growth and overall health. But that's a lot to go into in one video, so we can talk about that at a later time. At this point for this video, I'm going to go into it under the assumption that water quality is not an issue, and we're going to talk about how to maximize all the other things around it to get good healthy coral and with great color and with great growth. So again, this video is going to focus a lot on growth. We're going to talk a little bit about dosing. We're going to show you some feeding. I'm going to talk about the flow in my tank. Flow is a very important part to coral health. And we're going to talk about placement. Hammer coral grows under many different light par intensities. So we're going to talk about that placement and how that will affect the growth of the coral, the look, and the vibrancy. All right, so we're going to start off here talking about growth, and of course everything that we talk about after growth affects growth. Something I want to point out just going into it is that the more heads you start with, the more growth you'll get. So if a head splits every couple months and you start with 8 heads, in 2 months you could have 16. If you buy one in 2 months, you could have 2. So the more you start with, the faster the growth you're going to see. So the first example here I have is this WWC Aussie Blue Gold Hammer. I bought this on May 10th of 2022, and I bought 8 heads. And this is what it looked like when I initially bought it. As you can see, it's got one good solid back row and a little bit popping out on a second row there. Really, that middle section there is really protruding out, so it's got a little bit of growth going on in the second row, but it's really just one solid row of heads, and there's a total head count of 8 there. So I started with 8 heads on May 10th, 2022. So panning out a little bit here, you can get a little bit better shot, a little bit better look to what it actually looked like. That, again, one solid row. We have that one head that split and is kind of protruding out, and you can see a little bit of development in that second row, but really it's one solid row with one head protruding out. So on July 29th, 2 months and 19 days later, here's a picture of it with the nighttime. I came down at night and got a picture when all the heads were closed up. So again, this was July 29th, 2022, 2 months and 19 days later. So this is the growth. We'll do a head count there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So in 2 months and 19 days, we went from 8 heads to 17, and this is what it looks like now. You can see there are 3 solid rows there. It really just started expanding in all different directions, and even you can see that back row there, those are starting to split. Actually, several of them already are split, and it's starting to create that 4th row. It's filling out really nice. It is kind of growing in this rectangular shape, which, you know, takes up plenty of room in the tank, looks really nice. And it's got 3 solid rows with that 4th row coming in, and a total of 17 heads. Again, 17 heads in 2 months and 19 days. So really good progress, but I also started with 8 heads. I didn't start with that 1. All right, so this one here is that standard green stem, purple tip. I started with this frag here. It was 2.5, we'll call it 3 heads. It was 1 individual head, and then on the other side there was a splitting head, so we'll call it 3. I put it in the tank about 9 months ago. And this one is, we'll see later in placement, this one is low in the tank. So it is not receiving a ton of light, as well as it is being blocked by my frog spawn above. So it gets a lot lower light. At that rate, when you look at this thing without the lights on, there are 10 heads there. So in 9 months, I went from 3 heads to 10 heads. So nowhere near the accelerated growth that I saw on the other one. But it's also a factor of the way where it's placed within the tank. This next example here is a bright green tip hammer. This was 2 heads. It was starting to split a little bit. So we'll call it 2 splitting heads. There was no way there was 4 heads there. It was more like 2 heads with 4 mouths. And it was put in again 9 months ago, same time as the other one. And I'm up to 8 full heads in 9 months. Again, this is another one that is not right up top, heavily under light. It is down in a lower par section. And it's kind of hanging off the cliff side, just like the other one. The other one was hanging off a cliff side as well. So the light it gets is a little bit less intense than some of the other hammers in the tank. But it went from essentially 2 heads to 8 heads in 9 months. And then this one here is the bicolor grafted hammer I have. So if you kind of look at, here's where I started. One, it was an unhealthy coral when I started, so I had to get all that health back in it. You can see those heads are small, measly. The skeleton was covered with algae when I got it. My cleanup crew picked it clean, as you can see there. But it just was not the healthiest coral when I got it. So we had to get health back first and foremost. And I put this into the tank 8 months ago. And here it is now. Again, all these update videos were taken July 29th, just to kind of show you what the size is. Now you're going to look at that and you're going to start counting heads, and you're going to say, well, there hasn't been a ton of growth. And this one is high at the top of the tank, just a little bit lower than what the gold one was, but nonetheless high at the top of the tank. What I will say on that is, over the 8 months I've had it, I have fragged it twice. So all the growth that I did get, I fragged off and sold. So talking a little about dosing and feeding, these are the main things I utilize in the tank for dosing and feeding. Looking first at the dosing piece, there's just two main things I dose. The first one is Polyp Lab 1. And Kent Coralvite. So the Polyp Lab 1 is a calcium alkalinity and magnesium supplement all in one. It does the same thing as the two-part systems do, but it is all in one. And then the Kent Coralvite is a little bit of an all-around supplement that does a little bit of everything, replenishes some trace minerals and things like that. And so in addition to the trace minerals, it's got a little bit of everything. If I was going to dose one thing and one thing only, it would be the Kent Coralvite, again, because it's just got a little bit of everything and it's a well-rounded additive. So looking at the feeding here, I feed a few different things. First thing I'll note is live phytoplankton. I do feed live phytoplankton to the tank. I think it's great for filter feeding corals, as well as it's a good food source for copepods within the tank. I also feed Reef roids and polyp booster. So the polyp booster is a great additive. It has amino acids and things like that that the corals need to help promote their color. You're going to see me feeding all the corals here with Reef roids. I do direct feed every single head twice a week. It sounds like a lot more work than what it is. I can direct feed my whole 45-gallon tank, every single hammerhead, every single frog spawn, every single torch, all the acans, everything I feed every single head, every single time, twice a week. And again, it sounds like a lot more work than what it actually is. And we're going to see here, some of these corals have, or some of these hammer corals have an immediate response to the Reef roids. Some of them have a delayed response. You can see that hammer there moving a little bit to take it in. And that gold one, which we'll see in a minute, has like no response. So watch this guy here. When it gets sprinkled on, again, direct feeding, you can see it immediately closing up and with the Reef roids hitting it. So definitely I do see a feeding response out of this guy. I will see a feeding response out of some of the other hammers as well, but not all of them. Like I mentioned, that gold one does not give a direct feeding response. And so here's the gold one with Reef roids sitting on it after I fed. As you can see, those polyps are still full and very, very full and bulbous, and it's not like they're pulling anything in. I've heard it argued whether people think hammers eat the Reef roids or don't eat the Reef roids, and that, it just depends on the individual hammers, and that some do and some don't. You can see how that guy has changed its position there. It started pulling its tentacles in with the Reef roids, and either way, I do feel they get some benefit out of it, which is why I obviously continue to do it. I think it's a great supplement and a great all-around nutrition. So even you saw the orange one there, you can see this guy here again pulling in on it. And like I said, I also use that polyp booster right beforehand, give it a good 5 or 10 minutes, and that polyp booster provides one, a feeding reaction to help get these guys into feed mode, but two, it is also a great source of amino acids which help produce color within hammer corals as well. So looking at a little bit more of that feeding response, you can see this hammer coral here has a little bit more of a response to it than say this guy here. This one here, you can see the reef roids kind of sitting on top of it versus pulling it in. But again, I do think some of it gets down in there, and I do think it makes a difference. And again, looking at this guy through the glass instead of top down, you can really see the difference in its shape and that it is pulling some of that reef roids in. And you're getting that feeding response there. And so this guy is my Holy Grail hammer. Getting a similar feeding response as I did with my gold hammer, where it doesn't look like it's pulling anything in and the reef roids are just kind of sitting on top of it. But again, even if they don't pull it in directly when I feed it, I do still believe during the time of filter feeding, once the flow is kicked back on, that they do get benefit from the added reef roids. I think it's just a great feeding supplement. So moving into flow here, I do have my tank running on random flow. So I do have some constants. I have a constant flow of 600 gallons per hour from my filtration, as well as I have a stationary power head. And then I have random flow, and that random flow comes from an AI Prime Nero 3, and it ranges between 500 and 1500. So looking at the Nero 3, we have several options to choose from. Again, like I mentioned, I chose the random flow, but there are several different options you can choose from. So the options you can choose from are constant speed as well as random flow, which is the one that I use. And then you can also choose from pulsing, which creates like a resonant wave. So it's going to create that wave in your tank if you were to put it on the far side and create that wave over. And then you have feed mode. So like I mentioned, I do the random flow and I run it at 25% low, 75% high with a medium speed as my variance. So again, 25% low, 75% max with a medium variance speed. So looking at it, this is kind of what it looks like at that point in time. It was running 1326 gallons per hour. And again, it is variable speed anywhere from 500 to 1500, giving my total tank variable speed between 1100 and 2100 with that static flow I have in there as well. So looking forward into placement, I have a lot of hammer, and I have a lot of hammer all throughout my tank. So you can see some of it's low, some of it's high, some of it's under cliffs, some of it's sheltered by other corals. And it's just all over the tank in varying different parts. Some of it's at the same level as my Monty cap, some of it's below the Monty cap, some of it's above the Monty cap. Same thing with, my other, I have some acros in there, as well as I have some branching Monty kind of hidden towards the sides. All of that is at varying heights with my hammer both above and below it. And so just another thing to add, and it is personal opinion, I do believe the golds and oranges and some of those brighter color formations do better higher in the tank with a higher par, whereas the kind of standard green with purple tip can really be placed almost anywhere within the tank. I would not place a gold or an orange lower in the tank. I just think they need that higher par level to really grow and flourish. And then as well as when you're placing the tank, keep in mind flow, because flow does affect the growth pattern, as well as if you place it on, say, a cliff, it really only has one place to grow, and that's up towards the light. So hopefully you got some knowledge out of this video. Hopefully it helps. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, check out some more of my content, and I'll get more out soon. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.